Alright, this video I'm going to analyze the question, does Wing Chun exist in America? In my eyes, I find it very difficult to believe that Wing Chun exists in America. You know, I was reading Bruce Lee's book. In the beginning it said that Wing Chun is over 400 years old, the system is. Now Bruce Lee's way, Jeet Kune Do, he died like a little bit over 40 years ago. So my thought is, we know about Wing Chun because of Bruce Lee. If it wasn't because of Bruce Lee, we wouldn't even know about Wing Chun, really. Bruce Lee is the one who introduced the Wing Chun system to America. Now Bruce Lee died 40 years ago, over 40 years ago, just a little bit over 40 years ago, and then the Wing Chun creator died over 400 years ago. So that's a big difference. 40 years compared to 400 years. Okay, so think about it. He only died a little bit over 40 years ago, and there's already so much corruption when it comes to Bruce Lee's art and Jeet Kune Do. As soon as he died, they had to find a double, to have a person that looked like Bruce Lee play Bruce Lee in the Game of Death. And when we watch the movie, we already know who's the real Bruce Lee and who's not. They had to do what they had to do to finish the movie. And then after he died, there's other people like Bruce Lee that they tried to make, martial art movies to pretend like he was Bruce Lee. And that kind of fit him well. Bruce Lee, it's a lie. It's not Bruce Lee, it's a complete lie. So Bruce Lee, Bruce L.I. And we know that that's not the real Bruce Lee. You could try your hardest to replace him, but you never will. People already know if it's the real Bruce Lee or if it's not. And then after he dies, before he died, he closed down all 3 of his schools, and he refused to publish any writings because he didn't want people to take his teachings and make it into like a how-to book, because he didn't believe that martial arts could just be learned in just like a how-to way from just learning from books like that. So he refused to publish anything. When he passed away, then they just published his writings anyway. And then now you have lots of people claiming Jeet Kune Do that weren't even living at the time of Bruce, never even met Bruce, never even trained directly by Bruce, never even got Bruce's permission, but yet there's still a lot of, so-called Jeet Kune Do schools out there. A lot of people claiming Jeet Kune Do. So you see a lot of corruption. And even in Bruce Lee's book, The Tao of Jeet Kune Do, it says in the introduction, the guy said, be very aware and just watch out for these Jeet Kune Do schools out there. Watch out for these Jeet Kune Do schools that are developing. In my eyes, Jeet Kune Do was created by Bruce Lee, and it belonged to Bruce Lee, and it died with Bruce Lee. Like, there can't be another Jeet Kune Do. It was only Bruce, and that was it. Now, his teachings can inspire people towards finding their own path in the martial arts, but people cannot just take that label and reclaim it without the permission of Bruce Lee. Now, that's what I see with the whole Bruce Lee thing. And the thing is, if Bruce Lee's method and his way has already been so clearly, severely corrupted within a period of 40 years, imagine how severely corrupted the Wing Chun system is when it's over 400 years old. And in addition, it wasn't even created in America. It was created all the way in China. So imagine how corrupted that system is. I just don't feel that Wing Chun can even exist in America legitimately. You know, if it does exist, if the real system does exist, then it's going to be somewhere in China. You know, these are other observations that I have, you know, that the Chinese don't, the Chinese in America especially, they don't even care about the martial arts. Like, you'll have a very difficult time, first off, even finding a Chinese person in America to begin with. And then if you do find a Chinese person in America, you'll have an even harder time to find any Chinese person that actually practices martial arts, much less even care about martial arts. That's a rare find in itself. And if you find a Chinese person in America that practices martial arts, to find a Chinese person in America that's actually really good at the martial arts, that's an even tougher requirement. I just don't see many Chinese people in America to begin with. In addition, I don't see many Chinese people that even practice martial arts in America. And much less, I don't see any Chinese people that practice martial arts in America that are actually even good. You know, but what I do see in America is I see a lot of Chinese restaurants. You know, a lot of Chinese restaurants that are not really owned by that, you know, Caucasians or blacks or Hispanics, but a lot of Chinese restaurants that are owned and operated by Chinese people. I see that. I see that quite often. And that's a business that I can believe in because I see it. So if you're going to have a question, you know, is this restaurant, does it have authentic Chinese food? That can be determined because there is a very, you know, a big competition when it comes to restaurants, Chinese restaurants. There's a lot of Chinese restaurants. And there are real Chinese people coming straight out of China that even barely speak English, that have just immigrated here, that are working at these Chinese restaurants. Working at these Chinese restaurants, working in the Chinatowns, in the stores, in the shops. But even in the Chinatown in Chicago, there's not even one martial arts school. But you got hundreds of Chinese restaurants, Chinese shops. You got hundreds of Chinese people all over Chinatown. They love to eat Chinese food. But then none of them practice martial arts. None of them even care about the martial arts. What else do you see here in America? You see a lot of massage parlors that are operated by Chinese people, that are legitimately real Chinese people that just immigrated from China, that are giving these massages. What else do you see? You also see Chinese people that are from China that are providing service for acupuncture. I see that as well. I see acupuncture, I see massage, I see Chinese food, but I do not see Chinese martial arts from Chinese people in America coming from China. I don't see that. You know, so the Chinese have put their energy, when they travel here to America, they put their energy into the food industry. They put their energy into the medical industry, into the massage industry. But they don't put it into the martial arts industry. Now, I don't know much about the other styles, the other ways, but as far as Taekwondo is concerned and karate, I feel that those two countries put more emphasis on their martial arts propagation to America than the Chinese do. I do see real Korean people running Taekwondo schools in America. I do see that. But I do not see real Chinese people running Chinese martial arts schools in America. There may be non-Chinese people trying to run Chinese martial arts schools in America, but I do not see real Chinese people running Chinese martial arts schools in America. Now, if somebody is studying a system in China and then say it's a Chinese person and he brings that system over here to America, whatever he calls it will be what it is. But I still do not see such a thing as authentic Wing Chun. Even if the person is really talented in what he does in China, a real Chinese person who's really talented in martial arts, and he brings his talent over to America and starts teaching in America, I still do not see it to be authentic Wing Chun. I just do not see that it exists in a pure form. He might just have his expression in the martial arts. To me, it's just his expression of Kung Fu. And he might be hiding behind the Wing Chun label because people don't know who he is. And he doesn't want to use his real name because people won't want to learn from him because they don't know who he is. So his name might be Wong Sing. And then he might call it Wong Sing Kung Fu. Wong Sing Kung Fu. Right? And then he comes to America and he labels his school Wong Sing Kung Fu. And then people just walk on by and they don't want to learn. They don't want to give him business because they don't even know what that is. But if he says, oh, you know, I practice Wing Chun, now, you know, there's a lot of students lined up at the door because they want to learn Wing Chun. But he's not really teaching Wing Chun, he's just calling it Wing Chun because that's what's popular in America's eyes. And that's what will draw the people in through the door. But it's not the real Wing Chun. The real Wing Chun died over 400 years ago. But the name of Wing Chun has been made popular as a system because of Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee criticized the effectiveness of Wing Chun, the system, and through his critical analysis, it has generated an immense following for that system. Now, if Bruce Lee would have, instead of saying Wing Chun, if he said he would have started off with Choi Li Fut, then everybody would have jumped in the bandwagon of Choi Li Fut. But since he said Wing Chun, now everybody is associating the Chinese martial arts with just Wing Chun, when actually there's hundreds of styles coming out of China, not just Wing Chun. And I think it's just all a marketing scheme, in my opinion. You know, like if you're learning from a real Chinese person that immigrated from China and he barely even speaks English, then I have no doubt to say, okay, you're learning a Chinese martial art. This Chinese person is teaching you his expression of the martial art, and you're learning a form of the Chinese martial art. As far as what form of the Chinese martial art, well, it's dependent on whom you're learning from. And if the person is named Wong Sing, then you're learning Wong Sing's Kung Fu. That's how I see it. You know, I do not see that any of these styles hold any weight in America whatsoever. Because there is no organized, structured way of distribution that's governed by any authority. For example, when you got something like McDonald's that has millions of dollars and they're opened up thousands of locations in America, probably over 13,000 McDonald's locations in America. When they opened in China, that's a legitimate McDonald's location, even though it's across seas, because they have the money to fund that. They have the money and the resources and the organization and the authority to franchise, not just within their own country, but even franchise to another country and make it all the same. You know, where it's governed by one source. It's backed up to be legitimate. But you don't have the same thing happening with the martial arts. There's not enough money, not enough funds to make that happen, not enough interest, not enough passion. Now there is such a thing for the restaurants, because the restaurant industry is a booming industry when it comes to not just China, but also America, where you got these Chinese CEO, these Chinese wealthy people that make a very successful restaurant in China, and they bring that success to America and they franchise. But you do not see that with the martial arts. Everything is just thoroughly corrupted. I do not believe that any of these systems can be legitimately held intact the way that these multi-million-dollar businesses have been able to do so, such as McDonald's, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Subway, that not only do they have locations in America, but they also got locations in China as well. But I do not see any martial arts system holding that type of weight to put forth a real way that is consistent. You know, so, you know, you mark my word, I could pretty much guarantee you there is very few people in America that are learning the martial arts from even a real Chinese person. Because most Chinese people in America, they don't even practice martial arts. And in addition, even if you do find a Chinese person that practices martial arts, it's rare that you find one that's even decently good. And another thing to prove my point, with all this combat sport that's available, from the MMA to boxing to kickboxing to Thai boxing to judo to WrestleMania to football to whatever's out there to compete in, you don't even find one Chinese person that has reached a high level in combat sport. Not even one. Kung Lee was fighting in Sansao. He was really talented, but he's not even Chinese. He's Vietnamese. You don't even find one talented Chinese person in combat sport. Not even one. And in America, all the Chinese people that you meet, it would be rare to even find any of them that even practice martial arts. And it would be even more rare, like I said, to even find any of them that are even decently good. So, if you can't even find a Chinese person in America that's even good at the martial arts, then how can even a Chinese martial arts school exist in America? And much less, how could even a Wing Chun school exist in America? But what you see is a bunch of people that are not even Chinese that are trying to teach Wing Chun in America. How rare could that be? I don't even think the system even exists. Not only does it not exist in America, I don't even believe that it even exists in China. I do not believe that any of these systems can even hold the weight to keep their teachings secure and legitimate for over 400 years. That to me is very hard to believe. Even Bruce Lee died over 40 years ago, and even that system, even that way, could not even be preserved properly. How can a system that had been created over 400 years ago even exist right now? Legitimately. You know, we see the success of McDonald's. It's been around, I don't know, maybe 40 years. But even they will go through times of struggle. But look at how much money they're making to preserve their business. What martial arts schools do you see in America that could even make the money to finance and preserve their traditions for decades to come? Because in order to preserve a tradition like that, it takes a lot of money. In order to preserve it the right way, to pass it on to the next generation in the proper way, it takes a lot of money. And I don't see martial arts schools doing that. You know, some people email me, well, I like the Chinese martial arts, I want to learn from the Chinese martial arts. Okay, that's great, but the fact of the matter is, how could you learn the Chinese martial arts if it just doesn't even exist in America? If there is no Chinese, if there's not even one Chinese person where you live that's even teaching the martial arts, how could you learn the Chinese martial arts in America if there's not even a Chinese person that's even teaching it? The only way that you can learn is from the media, from the movies, from the YouTube, from the videos, from things that have been created from people, real Chinese people that might live in China or that have existed in some time in history that are teaching, and then you could get a glimpse of that and learn as much as you can. But then it becomes more of a home learning experience. You know, you could just learn as much as you can from the videos and the books that you find out there that are written by like real Chinese people or translated from real Chinese people. But I just see that whoever you're learning from, whichever Chinese person you're learning from, no matter if it's from a video or from a book or in person, it's that Chinese person's expression of the martial arts. It's not Wing Chun or whatever system. Because to me those systems just don't exist. not in a purified form. All of them have been polluted, heavily polluted through time, and that label is just being used as a way of marketing. Because you're not gonna know who Wang Xing is, but you're gonna know what who Wing Chun is, and then all of a sudden you want to learn Wing Chun, but you don't want to learn from Wang Xing, even though he might be a very talented martial artist. But that's the way that I see it. You know, if people want to value the Chinese martial arts, that's great. That's fine. But I think it just, in my eyes, it just makes more sense when you have an understanding of what you're, what exactly you are learning. When you're reading a book from Bruce Lee, okay, that's a real book from Bruce Lee. You're learning from Bruce Lee. Okay? When you see a video of Bruce Lee, you know, okay, that's real Bruce Lee. But don't tell me that Bruce Lee is Bruce Lee when he isn't. And don't tell me that Chuck Norris is Bruce Lee when he isn't. You see Bruce Lee, you know that's Bruce Lee. But my question is, where is Wing Chun? Where is the creator? How does she look like? How well could she perform at that time? Where are her writings? Where are her real disciples? Where is the real Wing Chun that has died over 400 years ago? I just really find it extremely hard to believe that the system that has died over 400 years ago can be properly preserved. Not just from China, but even bringing it from China to America. Suddenly over 400 years have passed, and then it can be preserved to be brought from another country to America and still call it the same thing. I just really do not see that to be something believable. Even an extremely successful business like McDonald's, I would find it extremely hard to believe that McDonald's will still exist 400 years from now in another country. I really have a hard time believing that. I think it's hard for anything to exist for 400 years in a purified form. And to make my point even more clear, Jeet Kune Do, Bruce Lee's expression, couldn't even exist for over 40 years in a purified form. There's already so much fraudulent Jeet Kune Do representators out there, and that's only been a little bit over 40 years. What I'm saying is, okay, you value China, you want to learn about the Chinese culture, you want to learn from the Chinese martial arts, okay, that's great. But don't call it Wing Chun. Call it what it is. Whoever is teaching you, their version of the Chinese martial arts, that's their way. And that's what you're learning. You're not learning Wing Chun. You're not learning Jeet Kune Do. You're not learning Shaolin. Unless you're actually at the Shaolin Temple, which for most people they're not. You're learning somebody else's expression of the Chinese martial arts. And call it like it is. That's pretty much what I'm saying. That's what makes sense to me. You know, after analyzing, you know, not just the martial arts, but analyzing religions, analyzing businesses and how they're governed and run. This is what I see.